Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, this week we're talking about why you should take a midlife career break to build a richer life. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now I have to tell you, just for a second, I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook, and I bet you probably do too. But there's a couple things that I really love about Facebook. And one of them is to hear exciting news about people I know. It's as simple as that. Sometimes you hear a hint or a sneak peek, or you see something that's coming up or going on with your friends, or in my case, sometimes it's podcast guests, and it just lights me up so much because I am so excited for them. That is what happened with my guest today. I had interviewed her way back in episode 71. That's 278 episodes ago. And a lot was going on with her. There was so much exciting news, including having a book publisher reach out to her. And I knew that I just had to have her on Women in the Middle again to share her story about the importance of taking career breaks and sabbaticals in midlife. As a midlife gal, you know firsthand that so many of us have been conditioned to believe that we have to wait. We have to wait until retirement to really live our best lives and finally enjoy things at that next level. My guest believes that this is a key mindset for so many of us that needs to be unlearned. You are going to love thinking about all of this. But just quick, before we get going, if you haven't yet checked out my new podcast, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, please do. We are having a lot of fun over there and sharing a ton of good stuff about the reality of running a business when you're a woman over 50. I would greatly appreciate your support too if you could share it with friends and colleagues that you know would enjoy it. It's on iTunes and all of the podcast places, including Spotify and your favorite podcast apps. It's also on my website at susierosenstein.com under the podcast tab. Enjoy. Okay, now let's dive into this week's topic, which is all about taking a career break as a way to build a richer life now, basically as part of your midlife happiness plan. My guest today is Katrina McGhee. Katrina is a career break and sabbatical expert and the author of the bestseller, Taking a Career Break for Dummies. You know those Dummies books? This is a good one. As a certified master coach with an MBA, Katrina empowers mid-career professionals to create transformative and daring breaks, ultimately leading to a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Her clients return from their breaks recharged, inspired, happily employed, and forever changed. On their time off, her 70-plus clients have traveled the world, launched a business, changed careers, and more. Katrina's work was inspired by her own 20-month career break where she saved $40,000 in just 18 months to quit her corporate job to travel the world. She's now an enthusiastic world traveler and a digital nomad. Her advice on career breaks, money, and travel has been shared across various outlets, including Forbes, Smarter Travel, Thrive Global, and Yahoo. You're going to love hearing Katrina's message. You'll easily be able to apply her message to your thoughts about life in general, too, with the way that you think about being productive, being busy, and rest, for example. So, buckle up, girlfriend. There's a lot here. Please enjoy this episode. Hi, Katrina. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Thanks for having me, Susie.
Well, this is a special interview because it's very rare that I have the same guest on twice. And I wanted to do this because, of course, I'm on Facebook and I saw something really big happened in your world. And you have a new book called Taking a Career Break for Dummies. And when I interviewed you originally, episode 71, which would have been in 2018, there was no book that we were talking about, only the experience of you having had career breaks. So there's so much going on here. I love a good story about amazing women doing their thing, finding out what it is that they really want to do and how they want to put it out there for happiness and fulfillment, and lots of times to help other women. And that is you. So I'm so glad you're here. Tell us what was going on in the last 5 years from the time we interviewed. Now, I know it's only an hour interview or so, but in the nutshell, I want to know what was going on and how this book came to be.
Oh my gosh, Susie, this is so fun to be on your show again because you caught me in the first year of my business, right? So it was very new at the very beginning. And in the 5 years since then, a lot has happened. I started to grow my business and then I hit a wall. I sort of burned out because I didn't like the first iteration of my business. And I decided to take a second sort of career break-ish. And I traveled around the world for 18 months. I did a digital nomad cruise with other nomads from Barcelona down to Brazil, and it was 13 days at sea.
Wow.
And it was incredible. Yeah, I had all these adventures. And then as COVID was happening, I was like, I really need to decide what I'm going to do with my business because I was letting people trickle in, but I wasn't advertising and I wasn't really pushing or growing my business. And I really decided the world needs what I have. And instead of focusing on career breaks and career changes, I'm just going to lean heavy into what I really want, what my mission and passion is, which is career breaks and sabbaticals. And I just started talking about that at the beginning of the pandemic, which seemed on the surface not that wise, but ended up being, incredibly well-timed for me and for the people that needed to hear what I was saying and the message I was sharing. And so my business started growing from that point, and it felt so much better. And so flash forward 2 years later, it's 2022, November, I get an email about writing this book. And I'm sure we can talk about how that unfolded, but it became this opportunity that landed in my lap. And I had thought to myself, I can never leave my business not telling people what I know, because I've learned so much over these last 6 years. I've now coached over 75 career breaks. I know so much, and I've seen so many variations of taking a break, so many ages, people with kids, people without. And I just really felt like I knew a lot, and I wanted people to know it, and I wanted them to know how to do it. It felt really important and kind of, like I said, my mission here. And I was really grateful for the opportunity to put it down in words and make it happen. So yeah, the book just came out a few weeks ago, and here I am a year later, and it's been an incredible journey.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So a couple of things. First of all, tell me more about what a sabbatical is and why that was the key to you really settling into this direction.
Yeah. So, the way I define the career breaks and sabbaticals are very similar. And what, I've discovered in my years of doing this, it's an interchangeable term. So some people will talk to you about a sabbatical and they're really describing a career break. But I technically, and especially in the book, describe a career break as you breaking from your job. So you quitting your job or quitting whatever it is that is your income producing thing and taking a break. Some people will refer to that as a sabbatical, but I refer to a sabbatical as a company benefit. So something where you know that you're coming back to the same company, maybe a different role, but the same company that you had. So more of an employee benefit than a career break. That said, when you hear people talking about mini retirements, adult gap years, sabbaticals, the terms are sort of blurry and interchangeable, but I want to make one thing clear. I talk about it as a career break because I want to break the stigma of the idea of taking a break. I don't want to have to make it sound sexier or more important or more productive. I think that break should just be a part of how we navigate our careers and our lives, taking these breaks, whether they're long or short or both. And I don't want there to be a stigma. So I just call it a career break because that's what it is. And I want us to get to a place where we can just talk about, taking a break.
I love that so much. And midlife women have a hard time resting. There's such a focus on productivity and what we make being productive mean. And I'm always talking about what if rest was productivity? Because that was, you're doing what you want to do on purpose. So isn't that being productive?
Yes. And we're whole beings, inside, outside, right? And it's so funny because rest feels uncomfortable, just like work feels uncomfortable. We think that rest should just feel easy. Oh, I'll just lay down and take a nap or lounge and, read a book. But a lot of times, real true rest feels uncomfortable because it is productive, but it's productive for the stuff on the inside, right? It's the systems, it's our nervous system, it's our brain, it's our body. And when we can't externally show results and like we're doing and all the things are happening, it can feel like nothing and we don't value that. But that's really, really powerful stuff going on.
I noticed a couple of the gadgets that measure health are picking up on that restorative thing.
Oh.
So I've noticed that too, that a couple of the things that I plug into pick up on that. And they say, oh, take it easy. Your body's under stress, or I don't know. My husband rolls his eyes, but I don't know exactly what it's picking up. But I always take the message and I'm like, it gives me pause. So I love that. And reducing stigma, this is a very good thing. I definitely want to hear more about the book. There's a lot of people listening to the podcast who want to write and who are writing. And so there are very different issues that come up. The people who want to write, we're often afraid of writing. We don't know what to write. And just the whole swirl of, oh my God, I don't even know what to do or how to do it comes up. And then the writers talk a lot about procrastination and fear of rejection and all of that stuff. So you had a book offer come to you, and writing for a publisher is different than self-publishing.
So different.
So tell me what that was like for you to had you thought about writing a book before that, or you were just getting comfortable talking about things again?
Yeah, I had thought in the very back of my mind, because my life has been so crazy. I've done so many amazing things. I've thought maybe one day I'll be that person that writes a memoir, right? Like writes a story of my life. I never thought I was going to really write a book. And I wasn't really sure I was going to write a memoir. It was just more like people would ask me, are you going to write a book about your life when they would hear my life? I'd be like, someday. But Susie, that was not on my radar. And, we talked before the podcast about your MoMA moment, and this was my MoMA moment. So I received an email, out of the blue. And I thought it was a scam. I actually was like, because, as an entrepreneur, everybody's messaging you and telling you all these things like be in a book, do a thing, whatever. And it's not real. And I was like, there's no way, because the title was something like taking a career break for dummies ? And I was like, the Dummies people are not writing me to ask me to write a book. Like, come on, that's crazy. And so I Googled her and I Googled the company because I didn't even know who the publisher for that series was. And it looked legit. So I wrote her back and we set up time to chat on video, and I loved her. She became my acquisition editor, but she was an amazing human. But I was like, I have good vibes from her and I think this is real. And so we started the process of writing a book. But oh my gosh, Susie, I was not prepared. It was kind of like jumping into the fire. And to your point about it being really different with a publisher versus self-published, it was so much better for me to write the book on the front end with a publisher. I think self-published has a lot of potential on the back end once your book is done with the profit margin and then what you can do with your book. The world is your oyster. There's a lot more rules and less money, way less money involved when you do traditional publishing. But because I wasn't thinking I was going to write a book and I don't consider myself a writer, it was so beneficial and honestly necessary for me to have the guidance, the structure, and the support. They have the cover, they have the cover art, they have the graphic artists, they have the editors. I had 3 different editors. Wow. I had a copy editor, I had a developmental editor, I had a technical editor. Doing production, figuring out how many copies do we print in the first run and what happens if we're running low and setting it up as an ebook. All of that was handled by them, and they just asked for my input and checked in with me. And so I don't know how I could have done a book like this without that kind of support.
I agree. Plus you have a nice juicy index here too. And
right. Yes.
And
I know, it's so good.
Yeah. It's a big deal. Now this is a book. And so, I know listening to the podcast, you can't see me holding this, but it is part of the Dummies series. It's thick. It's got lots of words. When I looked at it, I went, oh my gosh, how did you have the discipline and structure and to complete this? And so I can totally understand what you're saying, that working with an editor, and you're not alone when you're working with a developmental editor helping you figure out the structure. So if you take it chunk by chunk, it's doable. But when you just look at what you've done, it's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. Thank you, Susie. Yeah. They start with a table of contents. It's a reference book, right? It's like an encyclopedia for taking a career break. And so it starts with a table of contents that they do very detailed. And we have to agree on that. That's actually like the project map. And once that gets finalized, then the book starts getting written and I'm writing to that table of content. So I know what I'm writing and it really kind of comes together. But I had lots of imposter syndrome moments, a couple breakdowns, and just some points of exhaustion and just sheer force of will sometimes towards the end of, I can't write another freaking word, like make it stop. And it just keeps going.
Because you said 100,000 words in this book.
100,000 words. Yeah.
That's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, Susie.
It's very impressive when you get the book. Now, I don't want to skip one thing that I just want to mention in case you haven't heard the original episode that Katrina was in. It's episode 71, and it was called How to Take a Seemingly Impossible Career Break. And if you could just briefly give us how your career started and why you wanted to take a career break anyway, and then we'll get back into some of this other stuff.
Yeah. So the simple version is I was grinding it out in corporate life. I was an actuary for 8 years, went to get my MBA, and then moved into marketing, market research, and had a lot of success in corporate world, but did not feel fulfilled, did not feel good. And I ended up hiring a life coach back in 2011 and having this epiphany many months into coaching that I just wanted to take a break to travel the world for 1 year. It was not something I had done before. I was not a world traveler. I wasn't used to solo travel. It wasn't like I had all this experience. It was just truly a desire in my heart that felt like it needed to be fulfilled. And I was not happy in the life I had. It looked successful from the outside and it afforded me a lot of opportunity, but it did not feel good anymore. And so that career break changed my life. I ended up traveling for 20 months, and it was amazing and life-changing. And when I came back, I landed 5 job offers in 5 weeks after I had my resume uploaded. And that planted a seed for me to do this work because I realized that it not only improved my personal life, but it also improved my professional life. And so I went back to corporate, paid off debt, did all the things, got certified as a coach, and then began this journey of helping other people take breaks as well.
Wow. Okay. So the book people found you online somehow? Is that what happened?
They found, so it's like the breadcrumbs, which I'm sure you've experienced in this magical woo-woo coaching world. It's like all the things, like they happen over time, but the breadcrumbs, I joined a publicity course. And in that course, I learned how to, pitch myself to places like Authority Magazine. And so I had written an article for Authority Magazine, which was then on Medium, and then it was on Thrive Global. And she found that when her searching, because she knew she wanted to do this topic. So she found that article that I had done and then started researching me. And then, I had been featured in Forbes back in 2017, and she found that, and that boosted my credibility. And then she went to my website and saw some of my blogs and was like, okay, she can write. And so that was kind of how I think those were the breadcrumbs that led her to asking me to do it.
It's so crazy how things can just come out of the blue, but it seems out of the blue, but really it's not when you look at it, right?
Yeah. It's like overnight success stories, really are 10 years in the making, right? It's like all the seeds you've planted, and then there's that one seed, but it's a culmination of all the other things that have led up to that point. And so it did seem out of the blue. Absolutely. And it was unexpected. But it was born of, 5 years of very hard work and sometimes feeling like I was failing because I didn't get immediate results.
Exactly. One of the things that I talk about, a lot of the women in the middle feel like they're stuck and confused about what they want. So they know something has to change, but they're not sure what it is. And it feels very vague and elusive. And so one of the things I've noticed by coaching so many women now and the podcast and hearing back from so many people is that you're on the right track. You're on the right path, even though you don't know what the next step is. And so I think what we tend to do is compartmentalize our experiences in our mind, and we don't really see how it all fits together. Like even when I started coaching, it didn't occur to me until a year or two in how related it was to my grad school experience of qualitative research and becoming a good interviewer and looking for patterns in speech to see what people are really thinking so I can really understand what's going on from their perspective. It didn't occur to me how obviously connected that was. And I've seen it time and time again when people talk about their passion projects, their hobbies, what they like to watch on TV, the books they read, whatever they're fascinated by, you can usually find those breadcrumbs, and there's evidence of you moving in that direction. You just don't really see it. So I like to really think about the belief, learning to believe that you know what you want, even when you don't know, can be so, so important. And so when people come to you because they know they need a change, do they know it's a break at that point? Or do they just sense they need help? What is it?
Yeah, such a good question. So they come to me knowing that they would like a break, but unsure that that's the right answer and or that they can actually do it. So it is actually one of the funniest things about the work that I do. I have a lot of clients that come to me, air quotes, unsure. And after one session, or sometimes even after just doing their pre-work, they come to that next session and they're like, oh, I really need a break. I really need a break. I just didn't think I could take one. Breaks are amazing, right? So breaks aren't the sole answer. It's not like my life isn't working, so all I need is a break and then I can go back to my old life and everything is fine. Breaks are a catalyst for a change. Breaks allow you to have the space, to create the space and time to do the inner work and outer work that you want to do on yourself and in your life, so that the next chapter post break looks different and removes whatever wasn't working about that pre-break chapter, right? So the people that come to me, obviously they're working with me, like they have an idea or an inkling that a break could be part of that solution, but they don't necessarily know that it's possible. Sometimes they can't quite give themselves full permission until we start working together.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Katrina, because one of the biggest regrets that comes out in the research about regrets is that people do have that struggle to allow themselves to be happy, to really listen to what it is that they want deep down, that whisper, and to give it light, to give it the time of day. And then to allow the next thought is, okay, well, if I really allow this thing to ruminate in my brain, then how am I going to do it? Like the how is a very different question than I deserve this break. I'm going to own this break. I'm going to start asking my brain to work out how it's going to work out.
Yes. So good, Susan. And that's it, right? We can't know A to Z how before we even started.
Exactly.
It's impossible. I didn't know how. I didn't even know what I was going to be coming back to at the end of my break. And it turns out it was better than my wildest imagination. But we can't get bogged down in the how. It's like getting clear on what we want and then worrying about like the next right step and the first few steps.
That's all we have is the next right step. That's the only thing we have.
Yeah.
So what about the risks of not taking a break? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So brains, right? They're tricky, amazing little things that try to keep us safe. And so anytime we're thinking about making a big change, our brains really grab onto what do I have now in this moment that I stand to lose? What would not be here that is here now? Even if it's something you don't like, even if it's something you don't want to have, it's familiar. And so what we oftentimes do when we're thinking about these big decisions in life or these pivot points or these, like two big things that we're considering or these options, we're thinking about what do I stand to lose, but we're forgetting what do I stand to gain if I made this leap, right? Or I took this step. And so I like to think of it like 360 degrees. Our brains will look at the first 180, which is what's in front of us. What do I see now that I won't have? But it's not looking behind us. Like, what is the path behind us that we could turn to? And what's on that path that we are giving up? That doesn't always mean that you're going to decide to do the thing behind you, but it does mean that you're making a holistically thoughtful decision. Like you're doing the full analysis. And so I like to really underscore for my clients and people that follow me, it's important to think about what would life be like if I took this break? And then what is like life if I don't? And what you're giving up is just as important in today's world, right? Is giving like what you're giving up on the path of a break. If you never are restored, if you're just burned out, if you actually end up being 80 years old and looking back at your life and you're, not physically able to do the things you wanted to do, or maybe mentally able to do the things you wanted to do, it's like, what kind of life is that, right? So I like for people to journal about the risk. I like people to think about the risk of not taking a break. What would life be like if I did? And what am I giving up if I don't?
Absolutely. That's so good. And another thing that you mentioned in the book, these questions are all coming from things I got out of the book to really think about, how does this apply to, women in the middle? And one of the things you point out is one of the huge benefits is actually celebrating your life. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, because celebrating your life is something I've been called out on with a coach. You've been called out on it with the coach. Like, it's something I wrote about with the 50 ways to celebrate your life after 50. So what is the way you see celebrating your life and career break and sabbatical?
Yeah. So to me, I see so many of us, especially women, especially midlife women. We've worked really, really hard to get to where we are, and we've created a life that has a lot of good things, but it's really hard sometimes to see those things because we're still focused on the other things we think that are missing, right? Like the achievements that we think we still have to have, or, just that's life, that's brains. Like, focusing on what we don't have seems easier sometimes than focusing on what we do. But like, we've worked really hard to create the life we have. And I feel like celebrating your life is about stopping and being present to all of the things that are really good and true in your life. Really good.
We're laughing because Nico.
I'm sorry. I could go. I didn't care, but I was like watching her face and it was making me giggle.
Oh my gosh, here he is. Hi.
He was like a live animal, like a wild animal was coming so
like
big.
A bear.
Like a bear was coming. I was like, what is that?
I'm sorry. So this is Nico the Noof. He's telling me he wants a TREAT because he's eaten and it's all over his face. So I will get him a treat. A treat? You want a treat? He wants to help you. Okay, you made yourself known. I'll just give him a treat. I'll be right.
Yeah, of course.
I told you weird things happen on my end. Try to remember what you were saying, though.
Okay.
That's the trick.
So when it comes to celebrating our life, I think, especially for women, I've noticed, especially women, at midpoint and beyond, we've worked really hard over our life, given a lot to many things to create the life that we have. But because our brains are brains, it's easy to focus on the things still ahead of us, the things we still want to achieve or that we want to do or have, and hold. But really, it's amazing. I think breaks offer an opportunity for us to be present to all of the good things that we have worked so hard to create, right? So we've been working hard. We've built this life that is around us, but we don't oftentimes really stop to be present to it, to notice it, to savor it, and to really appreciate what is here because we've created this. We've co-created this, with the universe to be here in this moment. And I think celebrating your life is about taking that pause and looking around at what's already good enough and what you've worked so hard to have and what's here in this present moment. When you're on a break, you're able to spend time with people you love, the relationships that you have worked to build. You're able to, enjoy your home if that is where you want to spend your break, and to just love, have your garden or do your thing and just be really appreciative for the space that you've created, for the space that you've nurtured and cultivated over time, for the people in your life, and for who you are as a person, right? So if you are a gifted musician that just has stopped playing the piano, you can go back to playing the piano just for fun sometimes and celebrate that you are a gifted pianist, right? So it's about really being present to the goodness that is in your life and celebrating all of the hard work that you've done and all of the things you've created, instead of only focusing on what lies ahead and the things that you feel like you still have left to do.
I love that. It's kind of like you're making space for gratitude, and you have to be present to do that. And we're in so much of a rush. Oh my God. We're always in a rush to be more productive. Now, the other thing that you mentioned is when people are starting to think about a break, one of the first things that can come up when you think about what would I do? What would I do? And to quote the book, you said, visions of annihilating your bucket list. And that cracked me up because it's so true. Everything we do doesn't need to be epic and huge and expensive and everything else. So tell me a little bit more about why you could do little things that can be just as rewarding and fulfilling as giant, like go to the Galapagos, go on a safari, do the big things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to give you a real life example because I think it highlights this so well. I had a client. I love her. She's amazing. And when we were talking about her sabbatical, so she was taking a true sabbatical. It was going to be like a 3-month leave with her company. She was trying to decide a start date based on her travel ideas. So it was kind of like the company was offering this benefit. She was going to take it. And her brain immediately went to, oh, well, I need to take some international trip because I have 3 months off, which logically I get why she thought that. But I am a huge believer. Fundamentally, you have to develop a purpose statement and an understanding of what this break needs to be for you. What do I need to get from this experience to make it a successful experience? And what do I need to focus on so that the me at the end of the break is an even more, inspired, motivated, restored, recharged me and a happier me. And when we did her purpose statement and her themes, her 4 themes, travel was not part of that, right?
No
her
way.
purpose.
Wow.
No, yeah, it wasn't. Her purpose statement, Susie, was putting herself back at the center of her life because she had a partner, she had a job she was really invested in. She had, a home. She had all these things she was giving energy to, other people, other things. And she felt like the decisions she was making weren't about her. It wasn't her first. It wasn't her first kind of life. And the goal of her break was to put herself back in the middle. And so when we realized that, and then we developed her themes, her 4 themes, travel wasn't essential. It would be a nice to have, but it wasn't essential. And because she only had 3 months, instead of trying to pick a start date based on travel plane tickets, we're like, let's just start this break and do the work, and travel happens or it doesn't. Spoiler, it did not happen. And her break was amazing and life-changing. But, it was like designing it to meet her actual needs. And I think the first place we go is travel. It's like, oh, I need to travel. I need to see the world. I'm going to be wasting my time if I don't. For some of us, that's true. Exploration might be one of your themes, and that's definitely in line. That was true for me. That's not true for everyone. And so it's a default thinking. I have to make this epic thing happen. I have to go big or go home. But a break is really about taking exquisite care of yourself and pouring into yourself in the ways that you most need and want to be poured into in that moment and that season of life. So you can travel, but about 1/3 of my clients don't. So 2/3 of my clients have some international travel, but 1/3 of them don't. And it's totally amazing either way.
That's fascinating. Okay, there was another thing that popped out in the book that I needed to know more about. It was sharing the news of your break, because it can be perceived in a variety of ways, and people have lots of judgments and thoughts about what you're doing, including seeing you as self-indulgent or irresponsible, or, as you mentioned in the book, even reckless. So tell me a little bit about how you spread the news when you are very excited about this thing you're doing.
Yeah, it all starts with you. And this is the hardest part. People are going to reflect back, oftentimes, the energy and thoughts that you're bringing, even if you don't want to have that energy and those thoughts. And so it's really important that you find some level of belief that this is the right path for you. Even if you don't know how it's going to turn out, even if you're scared, those are all okay things. But believing I deserve a break, I need a break, I know that I need this, and I'm clear on my purpose, like why I'm willing to do this. I'm going to put myself at the center of my life, as an example. Once you have that clarity about why you're doing it and that you believe it's your next right step, even if you can't explain why, you can tell people about this experience from an energy of, I'm doing a thing. And even if you're like, I'm doing a thing and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm so excited and I'm so clear, I need to do this thing. People will often reflect back that energy of, okay, well, I support you in that. I mean, I have questions. I'm curious. You've kind of blown my mind, but also I'm excited because you're excited. So like, let's be excited,
Right.
And I think people oftentimes, they think immediately, I have to keep this in. I have to keep it closed. And they assume that everyone is going to be against them, or they're going to have a lot of questions. Or if they do have a lot of questions, it's because they don't believe in me. It's because they doubt what I'm doing. But if you aren't doubting what you're doing to the extent that you know it's your next right step, or that you need to take the step, you can show up with confidence. And when you do that, people are so much more likely to meet you in that space. So I tell people, start talking about your break to safe people, people that you feel like you have a loving relationship with, or even strangers that have no connection to you and don't care what you're doing. Start practicing, right? Speaking out loud, I'm taking a break. Because what people find every single time, the majority of people are going to be advocates for you. They're going to be excited for you. They're going to celebrate with you. They might be confused as hell. They might have a lot of questions, but it comes from a place of curiosity. It comes from a place of you blowing their mind as to what is possible, because what you're doing is not in their list of current possibilities. And they want to know more about this, but it's not necessarily a judgment on you. You will, of course, have a few naysayers, but they will be far outweighed by the people that want to support you. And when you start getting support, people will make amazing offers. I had somebody offer up their cousin's house in Bogota as a place to stay, even though they'd only met me once in a work meeting. We were coworkers. And he was like, go stay with my cousin. My cousin's amazing. She has a husband and a son, but like, I'll tell her you're coming. And I did. I went and stayed with them, and my Spanish was not even that good. And she only spoke Spanish, and we figured it out. And it was like a highlight of my break. And so if I wasn't telling people what I was doing, I would have missed out on a lot of opportunities, and a lot of opportunities for people to celebrate with me and just hold positive energy for me doing this thing and following my heart.
Oh, that's so good. And I can really see how worrying about what people will think and maybe some of that people pleasing energy might come up, because it's definitely not traditional. And as we started the interview, you said you really are committed to busting stigma about this as something that is possible. So I love that. Okay. Now I know that one amazing client didn't end up traveling, but I know a lot of your clients and a lot of people, in general, if it's a break or just a really juicy vacation, they want to travel. But especially in midlife, the idea of solo travel comes up a lot. People aren't that excited about solo travel, but many don't have the option of traveling with somebody else, just like with these breaks, because you're on your own agenda. It's your own dream and your own timeline. So tell us a little bit about solo travel when you're a woman. And like, I'm afraid of it. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many things. I think at the core of it, it's understanding why you want to travel. So again, knowing why you want to do something, like your big why, can really help you find courage and clarity on like, okay, this is why it's worth feeling uncomfortable, or why it's worth feeling scared sighted about something. So if you want to travel, right, it's like, well, what would be the most amazing kind of situation, or, like I could find myself in? I really love food. I want to be somewhere where I can walk and I can eat great food. And I love being warm. So I want to be somewhere warm with great food. And I want to do that because it's been a dream I've had for 2 decades and I've never indulged it. And I just want to know what that feels, right? That's a much more powerful motivating factor, kind of that clarity and understanding, than like, I want to travel abroad, but I don't know where and I'm scared. It's like, well, what is it that I really want if I wasn't scared? And then once you kind of know what you want, it's deciding how you can set yourself up to win instead of setting yourself up to fail. So if you're truly afraid, you can do many things. You can join an expat group. You can join a nomad group. You can join a Facebook group. There's so many Facebook groups for different locations. So you might decide, I want to go to Portugal or something. And so you could go find a Facebook group for that and learn from people that are doing it and be inspired by other solo female travelers that are living their life and sharing content there. But also you can do things like go on a tour. So there are companies like Intrepid that do amazing tours. And you could decide, I'm going to go for a 5-day tour with Intrepid, and then I'm going to stay on for a week by myself. And so you have a guide teaching you the best things and, giving you some context and some history, and you're with other people that speak your language. And then you get your bearings and then you stay on, right?
I love that. That reminded me right away as soon as you started talking about it. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of traveling in a group. I'm not afraid of getting on planes and trains and doing things like that. But it's the being in a city I don't know and figuring out all the things related to where to go, what to do, where to eat, blah, 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 all of that. But to be in a group by myself, especially a women's group, no problem at all. Getting there, no problem at all.
Yeah. I love that you have that awareness, right? And so you can stack that deck in your favor, knowing like, okay, this is where it feels hard. How do I creatively, design for that? And I'll also offer, as a solo female traveler myself, in other countries outside of the US, especially, although it happens in the US too, hotel and hospitality people are so helpful and they want you to have a good experience, and they go above and beyond sometimes for solo women travelers because they want you to feel safe. So if you are staying in a hotel and you're like, I want to know, like, what areas can I walk in by myself? I want to eat really good food, but I don't speak any Spanish or, any French or any whatever. Like, where can I go? They will hook you up, right? They will hook you all the way up. So if you hostel, obviously, like some people, some midlife women do hostel, like just, for budget reasons or just for fun, like they sprinkle that in. You're around a bunch of people doing a bunch of things that speak, oftentimes speak your language. and they're there as tourists too. So it's super easy to find dinner mates. It's super easy to find people to go, like on a tour with. But if your speed is more hotels, the staff is really accommodating and really helpful. And so knowing that I've done this many times. I ask them all the questions. They'll give me a map. I'll make them draw out where I can go. I'll have them give me recommendations. There are also tours. So because I have a gluten allergy, as an example, I will proactively schedule food tours for countries. And that helps me learn the lay of the land for places I can eat safely. It teaches me the history and the culture. And I also am walking through the city with someone showing me where to go and showing me like what the city is and like what the town is. So I feel like there are a lot of ways that when you figure out what you're afraid of, what specifically you're afraid of, you can sort of like build yourself up around that. You can create support around that to make it not so scary.
Wow, that's great. And I love that you mentioned food because for sure, I have food stuff going on now that I've never had before. It's so hard for me to get my head around it, let alone in a different country where I don't speak the language. So great suggestions. Tell us where we can get the book. And then I know you have something free to give out too. So let's hear about all of that.
Yeah. Oh, you can get the book on Amazon. It is out for sale and I hope you snatch it up. I'm very excited for this book. Yeah. So I'm so proud of it. It's like, I feel like it's my baby in a way.
It is your baby, taking a career break for Dummies. Is it with the dummy stuff, like in a bookstore? That's where you can find it?
It is. So the dummy stuff is typically now it's so voluminous. They have so many different books that they break it up into sections, but it will be with the Dummies books. But I think my book is showing up in business under like career development is typically where I see it in the Barnes and Noble when I do find it in store. But yeah, it's with other Dummies books, but in that section. But yeah, I'm so proud of it. So you can definitely find it on Amazon. I also have a webpage where you can go. It's thecareerbreakbook.com. And there's a free bonus. You get the break blueprint if you happen to put your info in there. But I'm excited. So be sure to grab the book if you're interested in, the idea even of taking a break. I talk about how you can make the decision and things to consider, whether or not it's right for you. And then in regards to free stuff, I find that one of the hardest and most interesting places people get stuck is envisioning what a break could be. Well, what would I do? And if I'm not annihilating a bucket list, although you can totally do that too, what would I spend this time doing? So I scoured 5 years worth of client emails and client stories and successes and wins and came up with 45 of the coolest things my clients have ever done on their break. And some of it is really amazing, but some of it is so beautifully simple. I have a client that learned how to keep bees and chickens from his neighbor while he was on a break. And then he ended up getting his own chickens once his break was over.
That's
so,
great.
So it's just a list of 45 things that you can do on a break to help paint that picture for you. And just get excited about the idea.
And where can people find that?
They can find that at kmcgeecoaching.com/45 things.
Awesome. And of course, we'll have all of these amazing links in the show notes. I also wanted to say that you don't really need to be a dummy to love this book. It's just, but honestly, when you see the book, you'll be so grateful that you have it because there's so many things in here that didn't even occur to me that would be relevant. And some things that I'll just mention one more thing briefly. You even talk about how to update your resume, your LinkedIn page, all that stuff when you return and how to position what you did in a way that's really useful for you. I didn't expect that in a career break book. That's so good.
Yeah. Thanks, Susie. It was, I put myself in the reader's shoes and I just thought, I don't want you to ever get stuck at any point from beginning to end. I just kept thinking like, where might you get stuck? What might you struggle with? And I tried to put the answer to that in the book.
It's in the book. It's so good. And I'm so excited to have you on the podcast again. And you can also, as a listener, you can go back and listen to episode 71, where Katrina was talking about what those breaks were like more specifically, if you're curious about that. And it's a very compelling story. So Katrina, thank you so much for everything, for coming back. Your enthusiasm is contagious and your commitment to helping women, be more fulfilled and happy, and not just women, but of course, that's who we're talking about. Be more fulfilled and happy going forward in their lives with fewer regrets. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Wow, I just loved having the chance to catch up with Katrina again. I love how she talked about the importance of planting seeds, even when she wasn't exactly sure about her ultimate career direction. As I mentioned, this is related to a common theme with women in the middle, the lack of appreciation for the idea that you just might be on the right path. It's easier to think that you're not on the right path, and that's why you're stuck. Katrina leaned into her ability to continually take the next best step and worry less about the perfect plan overall. This is pretty common too, because as a woman, there's often a tendency to diminish your brilliance. What I mean is that you probably find it pretty easy to discount your progress and success overall. It is often just harder to appreciate and trust that the decisions you're making regularly make as much sense as they do. Katrina's story illustrates the importance of developing this trust in yourself, even when you don't have a clear sense of the big picture just yet. I also love how Katrina shares the reality of her book writing and publishing experience, and the way that she was contacted from a publisher being like my MoMA moment, when an assistant curator from the Museum of Modern Art reached out to me back in 2017 to ask if I would be interested in having something I made included in an upcoming exhibit. Just mind-blowing. So in both cases, neither of us imagined that this outcome would even be a possibility, like it wasn't even in the realm. Yet, it was. And also in both cases, there were seeds planted along the way without knowing about a seemingly impossible outcome. It really gets you thinking about what is actually possible when you open your mind to focus on your happiness and fulfillment. Small decisions along the way are definitely affected by your happiness goals. Your homework, my friend, is to really think about what your happiness goals are. What might you have to think to ensure that you create a life that is full of more meaning and more fun? What about it? What's it for you? That's a really important question to answer. All right, that is it for this episode. As you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so you don't have regrets. That's why I want to invite you to have a breakthrough yourself. If you're feeling stuck, give yourself the jumpstart you need in the form of a breakthrough coaching call. It's a 2-hour private coaching call that's basically a deep dive into what's getting in the way of your clarity. What is getting in the way? We can coach on anything you need to make a breakthrough because I have a feeling you're tired of wasting valuable time. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. I have a few spots open and one of them can be yours. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 349. You'll also see links there for the new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.